The year was 3014, and humanity had been exploring the galaxy for nearly 2 centuries. They had woven themselves into the fabric of the Galactic Federation, an alliance of species and civilizations that spanned the stars. The Federation was a complex and delicate web of politics, trade, and diplomacy. It was an entity made up of hundreds of unique species, each with their own language, customs, and history. It was the result of millennia of galactic cooperation and mutual understanding. And yet, at its core, there was an undeniable undercurrent of tension. Humanity had not always been the most graceful participant in this federation. They were brash, blunt, and lacked the diplomatic subtleties that many of the older, more refined species had mastered. But they were also adaptable, clever, and resourceful. Their culture was built on survival, ingenuity, and a constant push for progress. It was these qualities that made humans an essential member of the Galactic Federation, even though their counterparts often viewed them with a mix of admiration and disdain. The Federation Council, a vast chamber filled with representatives from hundreds of species, was where the most significant decisions were made. It was here, on this day, that humanity's true power would be revealed, whether they wanted it to be or not. The time has come to address the issue of human behavior. The voice of the Ilgoran ambassador echoed across the chamber. The Ilgoran was a species known for its stoic demeanor and sharp intellect, with a skin that shimmered like obsidian and eyes that glowed faintly yellow. He was tall, with 3 sets of eyes, which gave him an unsettling but authoritative appearance. Of the latest incident, the Ilgoran continued, has once again proven that the human delegation cannot act in accordance with the proper codes of conduct. They have caused multiple diplomatic crises, including the recent incident on Arcadia Prime, where a human representative physically assaulted an Androman ambassador during a negotiation. The chamber fell silent. The Androman were one of the oldest and most revered species in the galaxy. No, they had evolved long before most others, and their intellect was beyond measure. They had the ability to manipulate energy, create entire galaxies in simulation, and had a perfect understanding of the fundamental forces of the universe. The fact that one of their ambassadors had been physically attacked by a human was not just an embarrassment. It was a breach of an unspoken galactic code. Sarah Ryker, captain of the human delegation to the Galactic Federation, stood in the middle of the chamber. She was tall, with dark brown hair pulled back into a tight ponytail, and her sharp blue eyes bore a gaze of quiet resolve. She had been the human face of diplomacy for nearly a decade, and she had seen it all. The accusations, the misunderstandings, the harsh judgment from species that could not comprehend the quirks of humanity. She had come to expect the challenges, but today, something felt different. Her team stood beside her, visibly tense. Beside Sarah was Jorik, a tall alien from the Tralcar system, his skin a dark blue with streaks of glowing green. He was her deputy, the one person she trusted most in this interspecies environment. He was more than just her assistant. He had become a confidant, a guide, and, on occasion, a voice of reason. "I understand the gravity of the situation," Sarah said, her voice steady. "But I want to make something clear. We do not condone the actions of the human representative in question. There will be consequences. However, painting all humans with the same broad brush is not only unfair, it's counterproductive. We're here to work together. That's the purpose of the Federation." "The Federation's purpose is to maintain order," the Ilgoran responded sharply. "The humans, with their lack of structure and their propensity for impulsive behavior, have proven time and time again that they are a liability. Your species brings chaos, not peace." The Ilgoran's words stung, but she had learned over the years to swallow her pride. This was not the time for retaliation. This was the time for resolution. Before she could respond, a calm voice broke the tension. "Enough," said the voice of the Androman ambassador, a being of pure energy and light. The Androman, ancient and ageless, had long since transcended physical form, existing in a state of pure consciousness. Their representative was nothing but a swirling mass of radiant energy, flickering in intricate patterns as it spoke. "While we do not condone the actions of the human representative, we also recognize that not all humans are the same. There is potential for growth, for understanding, but that potential must be nurtured. This council cannot simply expel humanity for the actions of a few." The Androman's words carried weight in the chamber, and Sarah saw a flicker of hesitation in the Ilgoran's eyes. The Androman, though they rarely intervened in political matters, held unparalleled respect within the Federation. When they spoke, others listened. Perhaps it is time to test humanity's resolve, the Androman continued. Perhaps it is time to challenge them, to push them to the edge, and see if they can rise above their own impulsive nature. If they can prove themselves, not only will they secure their place in the Federation, but they will also earn something more, a key to understanding the deepest truths of the galaxy. There was a pause. The Ilgoran's eyes narrowed, clearly weighing the idea, but he did not immediately reject it. He had to respect the Androman, even if he did not like their suggestion. I disagree, he finally said, but I will defer to the council. Sarah felt her heart rate spike. She had heard the rumors, of course, the whispers about a secret test that could determine a species' true potential. But she had never thought it would be humanity who would be chosen to undergo such a trial. What do you propose? Sarah asked, her voice laced with both suspicion and curiosity. The Androman's light flickered in a pattern that Sarah had learned to interpret as a smile. A discovery, the Androman said cryptically. A discovery of unimaginable importance, one that will challenge your species to the core. If you succeed, the galaxy will know humanity's true worth. If you fail, the energy signature of the Androman seemed to pulse with graphias. You will forfeit your place in the Federation. The choice is yours, Captain Ryker. The council chamber was silent. The weight of the Androman's words hung heavy in the air. Sarah Ryker felt the pressure of the moment, the enormity of the decision pressing down on her. The fate of humanity, of her species, rested on her shoulders. Fine, she said, her voice resolute. I'll handle it. And with those words, the galaxy shifted. The next few days were a blur of frantic activity. The Federation's primary network had been sealed off. No messages could be sent. No ships could leave or enter Federation space. Communications had been severed and all systems were locked down. At first, no one knew what was happening. Panic spread quickly through the ranks of the Federation. Rumors flew. Some claimed it was an attack. Others believed it was a system failure. But the truth was far more complicated. Sarah and her team were given a cryptic set of coordinates and a simple directive. Go to the Nexus of the Void. Find the discovery. The Nexus of the Void was a place that had been whispered about in the halls of the Federation for centuries, but it was considered a myth by most. Located on the edge of known space, it was said to be a region of absolute chaos, where the laws of physics broke down and time itself seemed to warp and bend. It was a place few dared to explore and fewer still returned from. As Sarah stared at the coordinates on her console, she felt a rising sense of dread. The discovery was something of great importance. She could sense it in her bones, deep in her gut. The Federation had been hiding something. Something that had the potential to reshape the galaxy forever. Are you ready, Captain? Jorik's voice cut through her thoughts, his face filled with concern. Sarah turned to him, forcing a smile. She could feel the weight of their mission settling upon her, but she knew there was no turning back now. No, she said softly, but we'll figure it out. We always do. With a final glance at the shimmering holographic display, she made her decision. They were going to the Nexus of the Void, and they would find whatever it was that the galaxy had been hiding. The discovery was waiting. The weight of the decision still lingered in Sarah Ryker's chest as she stood at the helm of the U.S.S. Resolute. The ship had been refitted for the mission. An uncharted journey into the depths of the galaxy, a place where reality itself seemed to warp. The Nexus of the Void was an enigma, a mythical region on the fringe of Federation space where even the bravest explorers had failed to return. Sarah had heard the whispers in the corridors of the Galactic Council, stories of ships that ventured too close to the Nexus, only to disappear without a trace, swallowed by a force no one understood. And now, humanity had been thrust into this very mystery. She glanced over her shoulder at her crew, the members of the human delegation who had been entrusted with this task. Jorik, her deputy, was stationed near the navigation console, his long fingers flicking across the holographic interface as he worked to chart their course. Next to him stood Dr. Elena Ward, a human scientist and expert on interdimensional physics. Her gaze was focused on the digital map of the galaxy, her mind working furiously to prepare for the unknown ahead. A few other specialists, handpicked for their knowledge in fields ranging from energy manipulation to psychology, made up the rest of the crew, though Sarah couldn't help but feel the nagging weight of responsibility on her own shoulders. "Captain, we are approaching the coordinates," Jorik said, his voice soft but laced with concern. He had been her most trusted advisor for years, but Sarah could sense his unease. The U.S.S. Resolute had a seasoned crew, but the looming mystery of the Nexus of the Void was a different challenge altogether. "Acknowledged," Sarah replied. Her voice, though steady, felt tight. She had long since stopped thinking of the Nexus as a myth. It had become something else now, a tangible destination. The Federation had known something was out there, something dangerous, something hidden. And now, she and her crew were heading straight toward it. The sensors pinged as they crossed into uncharted space. The usual comforting hum of the ship's engines slowed slightly, almost imperceptibly. Sarah looked out of the window, the vast expanse of stars stretching out before them untouched by time, and yet all of it felt wrong. The fabric of space here felt fractured, as though reality itself had started to fray at the edges. "Report," she ordered, her gaze never leaving the stars. "The closer we get to the coordinates, the more the gravity wells distort," Jorik replied, eyes glued to the display. "Space-time is bending in ways we can't predict. It's not like any anomaly we've ever encountered." Dr. Ward's voice cut in, urgent and filled with excitement. "This is beyond our understanding. This isn't just a gravitational anomaly. It feels like we're being pulled into something. Something that's not entirely real." Sarah's stomach tightened. She could feel it now, that strange tug. It wasn't just the ship. It was like the very air around them was shifting, pulling them towards something hidden in the darkness of space. "Elena," she said, turning to the scientist, "what can we expect once we're inside the Nexus?" "We don't know. Theoretical models suggest that this space exists outside the normal boundaries of the galaxy. It could be a rift, a tear in the fabric of space-time. And if the Federation's legends are true, the Nexus may hold something ancient, maybe something dangerous. There's a possibility we might find remnants of a civilization long forgotten, or an entity with power beyond our understanding." Sarah nodded, absorbing the information. She had heard these theories before, but hearing them from someone like Elena, whose expertise was built on hard data and research, made them feel far more tangible and far more terrifying. As the ship passed the last few light years, Sarah's mind kept drifting to the words of the Androman ambassador, a discovery of unimaginable importance. What did it mean? What would they find in this unknown place? Could it be something that would change the fate of the entire galaxy? Or would it lead to their destruction? Suddenly, the ship jolted, throwing everyone off balance. Jorik swore under his breath as he struggled to regain control of the navigation systems. "Report," Sarah barked, grabbing the armrest of her chair as the ship shook. "The gravitational distortion is increasing exponentially. We're being pulled in faster than expected. We might not have time to make corrections." Jorik's hands flew over the controls, his brow furrowed in concentration. "How long do we have?" "Minutes, at most," Jorik replied. "If we don't stabilize, the ship's systems will fail. We could be trapped." Sarah's mind raced. The ship had been designed for deep space exploration, but this kind of anomaly had never been accounted for. She could feel the pressure mounting. They were on the edge of something terrifying, and there was no going back. "Do what you can," she ordered, her voice tight. "We're not leaving this mission unfinished." As the tension mounted, Sarah's eyes scanned the ship's systems, looking for any hint of an alternative solution. "Elena," she called, "can you analyze the anomaly? Is there a way we can counteract the pull at a full..." Elena was already at her terminal, fingers flying over the holographic controls. "I'm trying to, but the readings are inconsistent. It's like the very laws of physics are breaking down. Whatever is causing this, it's beyond any known force we've encountered." The ship groaned, its hull straining against the unseen force that threatened to consume it. "We can't just sit here and wait," Sarah muttered under her breath, frustration mounting. "I need a solution, people." A cold voice broke through the chaos. "There is no solution." The voice came from the central communication panel. Sarah's eyes snapped to it in surprise. The Androman ambassador's energy signature flickered to life on the screen, a shimmering mass of light and sound. "You have entered the Nexus of the Void," the voice said, its tone calm and serene despite the urgency of their situation. "Your ship is already caught in its grasp. Your mission is to discover what lies beyond, but there is no turning back once you enter. The Nexus will not let you leave until you fulfill your purpose." Sarah's pulse quickened. She had heard rumors of the Nexus's power, but hearing it from the source, the Androman themselves, only deepened the mystery. She had always assumed the Nexus was a place, an anomaly, but now it felt like a force with its own intelligence. "What do you mean by purpose?" Sarah demanded, her voice rising in desperation. "What do you want from us?" The Androman's response was cryptic, as always. "The Nexus has a will of its own. It draws those who seek it for reasons that are beyond their understanding. You will discover the truth soon enough, Captain Ryker." The hologram flickered out, leaving Sarah with more questions than answers. "What the hell does that mean?" Elena muttered. Before Sarah could answer, the ship's alarms blared, signaling a catastrophic event. The hull groaned again, but this time it was different, deeper, more resonant. Something within the ship began to warp. The walls of the bridge began to shimmer, and the stars outside the window started to stretch into strange, elongated shapes, bending in unnatural patterns. "Jorik, hold us together!" Sarah shouted. Jorik's fingers were flying across the console, sweat beading on his forehead as he fought against the ship's systems, but the force was too great. "I'm losing control. We're being pulled toward the center. It's too much." "Captain, The ship lurched forward, the pull of the Nexus too strong for any of them to resist. And then, with a blinding flash of light, everything went dark. When Sarah awoke, she was no longer in the captain's seat. She was on the floor, the hum of the ship's engine strangely absent. The bridge was silent. The stars had disappeared. The ship, as far as she could tell, was drifting in an absolute void. No stars, no planets. Just nothing. A cold, empty nothingness. "Captain," Jorik's voice called out to her from the darkness. "Captain, are you all right?" Sarah rubbed her eyes, trying to shake off the disorientation. As her vision cleared, she saw her crew members, all of them dazed and shaken, gathering themselves. The ship's systems were still functional, but everything felt wrong. Their surroundings had changed, warped like they had been pulled into another dimension entirely. "Where are we?" Elena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah didn't answer right away. She didn't need to. She knew they had arrived. The Nexus of the Void wasn't just a place. It was something far greater than anyone had anticipated, and it had chosen them. "We're inside," Sarah said quietly. "We're inside the Nexus of the Void." And just as she said it, a soft glow began to illuminate the darkness around them, faint at first but growing in intensity. A shape began to form. It was alien, unlike anything Sarah had ever seen, its surface rippling with an iridescent energy as if it were alive. The discovery had begun. Sarah Ryker stood in stunned silence as the strange structure slowly materialized before them. It was massive, its shape constantly shifting as if the laws of geometry had no hold on it. It appeared to be a monument, an ancient edifice suspended in the void, pulsing with an eerie, otherworldly energy. It loomed over the U.S.S. Resolute, dwarfing the ship in size. The surface of the structure seemed to shimmer, rippling in waves like liquid metal, its edges undefined, as though it existed in multiple states of being at once. The bridge was silent as the crew gazed at the sight before them. No one moved, and the only sound was the soft hum of the ship's systems and the distant thrum of their breathing. The entire crew was mesmerized by the unknown, drawn into the presence of something beyond their comprehension. "What is that?" Elena whispered, her voice barely audible as she leaned over her terminal, scanning the unknown object. Sarah's mind was racing, trying to process what she was seeing. She had imagined many scenarios when they embarked on this mission, but none of them had prepared her for this. She turned to Jorik, who was still at his station, fingers frozen over the controls as he, too, stared at the structure. "Any signs of life?" Sarah asked, her voice more commanding now. She needed information, any scrap of data that could help them make sense of this. "Nothing," Jorik replied. "It doesn't even register as a traditional mass. It's not emitting any typical energy signatures. But we can't deny that it's there. It's as real as the ship itself." Elena, still fixated on the structure, added, "The anomaly. It's like nothing we've encountered before. It's almost like it's existing outside of normal space-time. Sarah felt her chest tighten. It was one thing to theorize about this kind of phenomenon, but standing on the precipice of it was a different matter entirely. The Nexus had already proven to be a force beyond their understanding, and whatever this structure was only further evidence that they had stepped into a realm where the normal rules no longer apply. The structure before them seemed to pulse with an internal rhythm, sending ripples through the fabric of space around it. It was as though the very void was breathing, exhaling in time with the structure's pulse. The inexplicable tension, the suffocating pressure in the air. It was as though the structure was aware of their presence. "We need to approach carefully," Sarah said, trying to mask the unease that was creeping up her spine. "Yorick, maintain our distance for now. Let's get a better look before we make any rash moves." Yorick nodded, his eyes still glued to his display. "Aye, Captain." Adjusting course to maintain a safe orbit around the object, the U.S.S. Resolute slowly began to adjust its trajectory, gliding cautiously toward the structure. As they drew nearer, the structure's size became even more apparent. It wasn't a building in the traditional sense. It didn't have walls or windows, doors or entrances. It was more like a celestial sculpture, a construct that defied the boundaries of design. Elena's fingers flew across her console, her face lit up by the holographic screen as she analyzed the energy readings. "The structure seems to be absorbing energy from the surrounding space," she said. "It's almost as if it's drawing power from the fabric of space itself. This isn't just a passive object, it's active, it's alive in some way." "Alive?" Sarah echoed, incredulous. "Are you saying this thing is sentient?" Elena paused, clearly unsure of how to explain it. "Not exactly. It may be more like an organism, not biological, but a self-sustaining system. A massive interconnected energy field that adapts and reacts to its environment." A low rumble echoed through the ship, a vibration that resonated deep in their bones. For a moment, Sarah thought it was just the ship adjusting to the gravitational anomalies, but then the structure before them seemed to shift. It was subtle at first, just a flicker, but then the object began to ripple, the surface warping in patterns too complex to comprehend. It wasn't just absorbing energy, it was responding to them, to their presence. Suddenly the ship's lights flickered, and all around them, the viewports seemed to distort, as if the very fabric of space around them was bending. "Captain!" Warwick shouted, his voice tense. "Something's happening." "We're being pulled toward it." Sarah grabbed the armrest of her chair as the Resolute lurched forward, almost as though it were under some invisible force. The crew members scrambled to keep their balance as the ship shuddered. "Cut the thrusters!" Sarah barked. "We need to break free." But it was too late. The gravitational force emanating from the structure was too great. The Resolute was being drawn in. Elena screamed, her fingers flying over her console, desperately trying to disengage the ship's systems, but nothing was responding. The ship was caught in an inescapable pull, its thrusters useless against the overwhelming force. It felt like they were being swallowed by the void itself, consumed by this alien presence that had turned the galaxy's laws upside down. Then, without warning, everything went dark. Sarah's mind spun as she fought to maintain her bearings. She opened her eyes to find herself in complete darkness. The usual hum of the ship's systems was absent. The faint, rhythmic pulse that had once reverberated through the ship was gone. She tried to move but found herself disoriented, struggling to make sense of her surroundings. "Report," she ordered, her voice shaking slightly. Slowly, one by one, the crew came to their senses. The bridge lights flickered on, casting a pale glow over the room. The familiar, sterile environment of the ship's command center was now shrouded in a strange, shifting glow, but something had changed. The viewports revealed nothing but the swirling mass of stars and dark space that stretched infinitely around them. There was no sign of the structure. It was as though it had never existed. Jorik was the first to speak. "Captain, we've been transported." "Transported? Transported?" Sarah repeated, trying to process his words. "What do you mean? Where are we?" Elena, who had been frantically analyzing the ship systems, looked up, her face pale. "We're still inside the Nexus, but we're not where we were. It's like the structure, the thing, sent us somewhere else. It's as if we've crossed into another dimension entirely." Sarah felt a cold chill creep up her spine. If they had been moved to another dimension, there was no telling what kind of forces governed it. There could be no escape. Is there any way to track our position? Elena shook her head. Ina shook her head. I can't get a lock on any standard galactic coordinates. It's like the very space around us is outside of our universe's normal rules. It's not just spatial, time itself feels wrong. Jorik's voice broke through. Captain, there's something ahead. A light, a singularity, perhaps. Sarah turned to look out the viewport, where a soft, swirling light appeared in the distance, shimmering like the core of a dying star. The light pulsed gently, but as they drew closer, it began to grow brighter, more intense, and Sarah could feel the warmth radiating from it. It was drawing them in, not with a physical pull, but with an undeniable force of attraction, as if it were calling to them. Do we have any choice? Sarah muttered, more to herself than to anyone else. They had no choice. They had to approach. There was no way of telling if they would ever leave the Nexus, but the light, the singularity, held some sort of key. Whether it was a key to escape or a key to unraveling the mystery of this strange dimension, they couldn't afford to ignore it. As they drew closer, Sarah felt a strange pressure in her chest. It wasn't physical, but it was overwhelming. The closer they got, the more the ship seemed to hum with energy, as though it were coming alive. She had a feeling that this light, this energy, wasn't just a guide. It was the discovery they had come here for. The singularity pulsed one final time, and as it did, Sarah felt a jolt of electricity surge through her body, as though the very air around them was charged with something powerful and ancient, the U.S.S. Resolute lurched again, but this time it was a different sensation, a feeling of release, as if they were being allowed to approach. In that instant, Sarah knew that everything they had come to this point to find, everything they were about to uncover, would change the galaxy forever. And as the light grew brighter, it felt like the fabric of reality itself was about to tear apart, revealing the truth about the Nexus. A truth that no one, no species, was ready for. The discovery was waiting, and now there was no turning back.